If you watch Solo, ask yourself, what makes Lando and Han heroes? What makes him good and honorable? They are basically Antifa soy boys who would take turns bending each other over. Maybe the pansexual robot has a 10-inch adult toy attachment so she can sodomize both Lando and Han simultaneously. Like, comment, and subscribe. Send me your art. Click the links to suggest video topics on Patreon. A few people have donated, and I thank them for that. Who knew that being a jerk would be profitable? It's weird that people have literally paid me for being an asshat. I saw this cheesy poof and I immediately thought of Mike. Hey, Mike. Does that make you hungry? I punched in the first order on DuckDuckGo. How badass is this? This is, I know this is kind of I'm learning more about art because people are sending me art, and I'm realizing that, like, there's art in itself, like a drawing of a Stormtrooper helmet or the Darth Vader helmet, and then there's the composition, which means, to me, it means, like, putting it on the cross, and then there's kind of the totality of the artwork, which includes the lettering, getting the font right, and the placement right, and I realize it's like, and then there's the coloring. I realize it's all just, it's kind of a complicated, it's more complicated than I thought it was. It involves more people, and the idea of, like, finding one person who can do it all is pretty, I mean, there are people who can do it all, but it's pretty cool. But I saw this, and obviously this is a throwback to the 1986 album cover, Appetite for Destruction. What a phenomenal composition. This is awesome. Some guy's selling it on Teespring. Anyway. Oh, I was listening to someone, maybe it was Angleton at I Love Comics, talk about possible ways to save Star Wars 9. They had a kind of a total recall theory, which started as a novella by Philip K. Dick, I think, called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which was rewritten into a book by Piers Anthony, then made into a film with Schwarzenegger. Then I think a novelization was written. Maybe it was written by Alan Dean Foster. He wrote the Aliens novelizations, and he's really, really good. I'm probably wrong about the names, but I think there are 3 separate books written about Total Recall. The film came out in the 90s. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sharon Stone. It was a fun, straightforward, cheesy Martian romp. Actually, it had an excellent cast, and for the time, the special effects were perfect. It was a great role for Arnold. I think they might have remade it, but I didn't see the remake. I mean, why mess with a classic? Now that I think about it, it was a hell of a movie. Arnold had a few fun science fiction films in the 90s. The Running Man was based on a Stephen King book. You'll never see fun films like that again. These soy boys have absolutely taken over Hollywood. It's always been left wing, but oh my gosh, they have just kept mainlining soy. Films were way better when people were dealing with cocaine and toxic masculinity. There is no toxic masculinity. It doesn't exist. Political correctness just places restrictions on filmmakers. Nowadays, having a strong Austrian making action films would trigger too many soy people. There would be a lot of people who would be OMG, literally shaking. Do I say it? No, I'm going to skip that joke. Keep in mind that social media outrage isn't real. It's just for dopamine and serotonin. People are chasing shadows of outrage while ignoring very real problems. Anyway, for Star Wars 9, they were saying Rey is so powerful because as a kid, she was a Jedi in training. Something happened, she had her memory wiped, so she ended up on that armpit of a planet. So she isn't exactly a Mary Sue so much as she is in a Total Recall type of situation. She's starting to remember her Jedi training. It's just a rough idea, but it sort of works for me. I mean, it's a legitimate way to save the movie, but I'm probably putting too much faith in them. Even if they do try to fix Episode 9, 7 and 8 still sucked, and there's no way you can redeem those films. Oh, I heard Mike Miller talking about how much he hated the prequels, but then he said something that made me realize that he is good at reviewing films as your boy Meyer is. Mike said that The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi were better than the prequels. And I hope that he isn't listening to this, and I won't use his name in the title, because I thought, oh no, he's retarded. I think he might be suffering from George Lucas derangement syndrome. I think that he was so pissed off about the prequels that it just poisoned him. Mike's a good artist and he seems like a nice guy, but this is just an insane take. I have never met anyone who thought like this. Does anyone else agree with him? I admit that the prequels were not great, but The Last Jedi was shockingly bad. I think if you edited a half hour out of each of the three prequels, the films would be much improved. But yes, a lot of the prequels were focusing too much on a younger audience. A little Jar Jar goes a long way. And when you add in the little kid in the first movie, it's a bit too cute. Maybe they were focused too much on selling toys. They forget that you've got to have a great movie first. You've got to have people excited. You can't worry about toys, making a movie just to sell toys that's not the way to make a movie, and that's not the way to sell toys. But they probably made more money off the video games than they did the toys anyway. The Total Recall treatment is a decent idea, but it's too little too late. And I guarantee that they will screw it up. I was just thinking of the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I was trying to see if I wasn't being fair to the films just because it had a chick in the lead. But even in the beginning of The Force Awakens, everyone in it sucked. And while I joke around a lot on social media, women can be great in action films, no matter what Elizabeth Banks says. Princess Leia kicked ass in the real Star Wars. She was a sexy girl with a blaster. Her giant boobs were a major plus. Quickly searches Princess Leia's boobs in A New Hope. My lord, if you could see my search history, the things I have to see for you guys. YouTube-induced PTSD. So no, I think Disney Soy Wars legitimately sucked. But every once in a while you find people like Jude Terr and Mike Miller who have something nice to say about them. With Mike, he might be trolling. You never know. He is a crafty little hobbit. You know the whole so-called toxic fandom? Remember when they had a poll on Twitter asking who was on the side of the rebels or the Empire, and a sizable percentage of people said they supported the Empire? The soy people got triggered and started whining about Drumpf and the 1930s Germans. I wish 4chan would start a troll campaign. Hashtag the Empire did nothing wrong, or Team First Order. The First Order insignia is just a little bit too on the nose. So when people said they thought it was cool, the soy people started crying. But where's the lie? The First Order had way more style than the Rebels. Think how lame your films have to be for a big chunk of your audience to cheer for the bad guys. Though I guess one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. The First Order did have a lot to offer. Discipline, order, and cool uniforms. Cough, cough, Hugo Boss. What did the Rebels have? A bunch of diversity hires who couldn't do their jobs. Any military with Holdo as their leader is not the team I want to be on. You know, when you think about it, obviously the Rian Roundhead and J.J. Big Nose meant the stormtroopers to be representative of the Axis powers and the rebels are the allies. But their logic falls apart. If the Order is so evil, how do they have Finn? One of his commanding officers is that crazy chick who gave the cocaine-fueled interview about Game of Thrones, I think. You know what I'm talking about. She's like 6 feet tall, blonde, kind of chubby. She was in the silver armor. The First Order has colored people of color and women who actually were badass. They just want to restore order to the galaxy. If anything, the First Order is probably the more stable form of government. They tried to establish the First Order as the bad guys, but what exactly makes them bad? Admittedly, in The Force Awakens, they were blasting a bunch of people, but they were probably terrorists. What are they supposed to do? Let them live? Bringing peace and order to the galaxy will require dropping some bodies. You can't allow traitors and the wreckers of progress to live. You have to make some examples. It's a small price to pay if you have to kill a few billion wrong thinkers here and there to save the galaxy. I would think more lefties would support the First Order. They are an authoritarian dictatorship. Well, that's communism. The only people that have killed more people than commies are the Muslims. The difference is the First Order actually is efficient, while the commies starve their own people to death. Really, there isn't much of a difference in authoritarianism. The ideals are similar. There's a huge difference in execution. The rebels/commies always result in more dead bodies, so fascism is the safer bet if you're a fan of dictatorships. Admittedly, it's weird that they accuse the First Order of being fascist, but they have Finn and women, so they aren't very good at being fascist. Maybe it's one of the reasons Disney Wars is so bad. It's not a clear case of protagonist and antagonist. It's just two sides fighting. When the Sunni and the Shia are fighting, most people look at the battle with confusion because they both hate women, children, and gays. So when the rebels are fighting the First Order, what makes the rebels the good guys? Something that never gets mentioned is who is funding them. It's probably the Hutts, who are the Soros analogs in that universe. The First Order would have cracked down on the Hutts' illicit dealings. The Hutts would probably fund the rebels just to keep the fighting going. I can see the excitement building for Star Wars 9. The success of The Mandalorian has definitely fired people up. We all know that Skywalker is going to suck. There's no way to save that. But The Mandalorian has changed the equation. It's the first thing that feels like Star Wars since Revenge of the Sith, or really since Return of the Jedi in 1983. Is The Mandalorian going to get woke? Oh, you bet your ass it will. They are NPCs. They have to follow their programming. They can't allow anything fun without destroying it. Doesn't The Mandalorian have a bunch of different female directors? May I ask why? Why not just find one director you like and stick with him so you have a continuous vision? Oh, it also makes me feel like there could be other shows set in the Star Wars universe. You have a bunch of other characters to explore. The Hutts, the Wookiees, the smugglers and traders, the weapons dealers. As long as they skip the anti-white misandry, they could have some fun, successful shows. I think maybe any portrayal of young Han is going to fail. Finding an actor with the right personality is an almost impossible task. But if they want to reboot Solo, for the love of God, at least get an actor who's the right height. The actor in Solo was Hobbit-sized. I have to assume he was related to the director. He's way too smarmy for the role of Han Solo. There is a good 3-book series set in the extended universe about how Han, Chewie, and Lando all met up. Lando and Han were portrayed as much more honorable characters than the Solo movie did. The Solo movie felt like a bunch of kids playing as adults. They didn't feel like characters who were ever going to grow up to be the heroes of the galaxy. If someone remakes Solo, everyone needs a major attitude adjustment. Han and Lando need to be honorable men, not slick soy boys who are bisexual after a few cocktails. They need to be straight dudes. Anyway, yes, definitely Team First Order, Team Empire. Look how cool they are. They're much cooler than the ragtag rebels. That is something interesting that, in the original trilogy, there were clear-cut good guys and bad guys. You saw how bad the Empire was with Vader and the stormtroopers, because they're on the ship, they're blowing up planets admittedly the planet was a rebel stronghold, but the thing is, they were obviously they all had the kind of English accents, and it was obviously supposed to be a totalitarian, they could have either been space communists or space fascists, but it was very much an anti-liberty organization. They were the clear bad guys. But in the modern films, they haven't established the bad guys as bad. They haven't established the good guys as good. What makes the modern good guys good? They seem like a bunch of incompetent idiots who literally are diversity hires. Like I said, when you got Admiral Holdo as your leader, then you guys are doing something wrong. It seems like, I don't know, remember in 1914 when the Bolsheviks came to power, it is like they had these ideals. They came to power, and once they got power, the ideals went out the window, and they just started killing people and lining their pockets. So it seems like kind of a similar theme. Anyway, I thought some of this art was cool, especially the Appetite for Destruction thing. That is badass. Send me your art at biancazombie602@gmail.com. Join the Discord. I don't know, send me emails, Patreon, whatever, guys. I will see you next episode.